I've always been a little absent-minded. My friends used to joke that my head was always in the clouds. I'd forget where I left my phone, walk into rooms without remembering why, or spend 5 minutes looking for my keys while they were already in my hand. Normally it was harmless, but when you live alone in a converted historic apartment building, those little lapses stop feeling funny. You begin to wonder how much of your life depends on your memory, and how much depends on believing your home is exactly the way you left it. It started on a Tuesday. I just finished a 10-hour shift at the clinic. My feet ached, my back was sore, and all I wanted was a cold glass of milk before collapsing into bed. I opened the refrigerator, grabbed the carton, and stopped. The safety seal had already been broken. Nearly a third of the milk was gone. I stared at it, trying to remember. A cold, prickling sensation crept up the back of my neck. I didn't drink this before work. Did I? I closed my eyes and replayed the morning. 6 o'clock alarm. Quick shower. Throwing on my scrubs. Running to catch the bus. Maybe I'd poured myself a glass without thinking. Maybe I'd taken a few gulps straight from the carton. People forget things when they're exhausted. That's normal. I forced myself to laugh, poured a glass anyway, and convinced myself I was being ridiculous. For the rest of the evening, I almost believed it. Wednesday night, something else was wrong. I dropped my purse beside the couch and immediately noticed the decorative pillows. I always stacked them neatly against the left armrest. Always. Now they were sitting in the center of the couch. One cushion had a deep indentation, as though someone had been leaning there. I stood frozen. "No," I whispered. "You moved them. You were looking for your keys." I sat down anyway. The cushion slowly settled beneath me. Then I smelled something, not lavender, not my detergent, not anything I owned, sandalwood, cedar. A warm, masculine cologne that clung to the fabric. I leaned closer. The scent was unmistakable. Someone had been sitting here. My heart began pounding. Then my mind immediately fought back. No. Old buildings absorb smells. Maybe it drifted in from another apartment. Maybe I was imagining it. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the building sounded like footsteps outside my bedroom. Every pipe inside the wall sounded like someone whispering. Thursday morning, the bathroom changed everything. I shuffled inside, still half asleep, then stopped. The toilet lid was closed, but the seat underneath was up. I live alone, I'm a woman. I never leave the toilet seat up. Never. A wave of panic washed over me. I remembered checking the deadbolt before bed, 3 times. I remembered wrapping my hand around it and making sure it wouldn't move. I knew I'd locked the door. I slowly backed into the hallway. My eyes searched every inch of the apartment. That's when I saw it, my bedroom closet. I always kept the door shut to keep dust off my clothes. Now it stood slightly open, only a few inches. Nothing but darkness waited inside. My throat tightened. I yanked the door open. Nothing, just clothes, shoes, storage boxes. I searched every corner of the apartment, under the bed, behind the shower curtain, every room. Nothing. I called in sick to work. I spent the entire day checking the locks every hour, looking through the peephole whenever footsteps echoed in the hallway, watching shadows slide beneath my front door. Nothing happened. Strangely, that terrified me even more. If someone had been inside, where were they now? And if nobody had, why couldn't I explain any of it? By Friday night, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept properly in 3 days. Every tiny sound made me jump. Every passing car made me peek through the blinds. I finally turned off the television and sat in complete darkness, gripping the heavy metal flashlight I'd taken from the closet. Then, at exactly 11:15 p.m., the doorknob moved. I froze. It rattled again, harder this time. Then came the unmistakable scrape of metal. Someone was trying to put a key into the lock. I heard it scrape. Stop. Scrape again. It wouldn't turn. The key didn't fit. Whoever stood outside tried again and again. The doorknob twisted violently. What the hell? A man's voice muttered from the hallway. I screamed. A raw, terrified scream tore from my throat. I sprinted into my bedroom, slammed the door shut, locked it, and dialed 911 with trembling hands. I could barely breathe as I told the dispatcher someone was trying to break into my apartment. For what felt like forever, I heard footsteps pacing outside. The handle rattled. The keys scraped against the lock one final time. Then, the distant wail of police sirens echoed through the building. The footsteps stopped. Silence. A few moments later, officers knocked on my bedroom door. "It's okay," one of them called. "You can come out now." I slowly unlocked the door. Standing between two officers was a man in his late 20s wearing a backpack and pulling a large rolling suitcase. He looked pale, embarrassed, and completely confused. "I'm so sorry," he said before anyone else could speak. "My name's Christian. I rented an Airbnb. The owner texted me apartment 2B. One officer looked through the messages on Christian's phone while another called the landlord. Several long minutes passed. Finally, the officer returned with a weary sigh. "The landlord owns multiple apartments in this building. Christian rented apartment 3B. He accidentally received the wrong apartment number." Christian rubbed the back of his neck. "My flight from Chicago was delayed. I literally got here 5 minutes ago. I thought the lock was broken because my key wouldn't fit." He looked at me with genuine sympathy. "I'm really sorry." I couldn't stop staring at him. "You just got here?" He nodded. "Yeah." "Were you here Tuesday?" "No." "Wednesday?" "What about Thursday morning?" His forehead wrinkled in confusion. "I've been in Chicago all week." Silence settled over the hallway. One of the officers quietly lowered his notebook. My stomach dropped. Christian hadn't entered my apartment. His key had never worked. He couldn't explain the milk. He couldn't explain the toilet seat. He couldn't explain the closet door. The officers escorted him upstairs to apartment 3B. The hallway fell silent once again. I locked my front door, checked the deadbolt, then checked it again. The milk? Maybe I'd been so tired Tuesday morning that I'd forgotten drinking it before work. The toilet seat. I remembered cleaning the bathroom earlier that week. Maybe I'd lifted it while dumping dirty mop water and simply forgotten to put it back down. Those things made sense. Mostly. But the closet door... I stood in the hallway trying to remember. I couldn't, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember opening it. Eventually, I walked back into the living room. I reached for one of the decorative pillows. The scent of sandalwood and cedar still lingered in the fabric. Fresh, as though whoever had left it had only just stood up. I held the pillow close, trying to remember, trying to convince myself there had to be a logical explanation. Then one final thought quietly settled into my mind. I couldn't remember ever buying lavender detergent. My parents had finally bought their first house after years of saving. Everything still felt new. Boxes stacked in the spare bedrooms, picture frames leaning against the walls, waiting to be hung, closets we hadn't gotten around to organizing yet. 3 days after we moved in, my grandmother was admitted to the hospital. My parents packed their bags within the hour. "Watch over the house," my dad said on his way out the door. I didn't think twice about it. It would be my first time spending several nights alone, in a house I barely knew. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe everything has a logical explanation. That's what I believed. Until the first night. At exactly 11 p.m., the motion light on the front porch clicked on. I pulled up the security app on my phone. The porch was empty. I flipped through every camera angle. Nothing. No movement. No person. No animal. I checked the event history. No motion had even been detected, which meant the light shouldn't have turned on at all. A glitch, I told myself. Sensors do that sometimes. I locked every door before bed and didn't think about it again. The next morning, I opened the front door and found 2 muddy, barefoot footprints sitting on the porch. They ended at my welcome mat. No prints leading up to them. No prints leading away. Just 2 footprints, like someone had simply appeared there and vanished. I searched the entire house, closets, attic, garage, crawl space. Nothing. No sign of forced entry anywhere. I decided someone was messing with me. A neighbor. A prank. Something with an explanation I hadn't found yet. I reset every password, changed the Wi-Fi, and linked my laptop to every camera in the house. I was going to catch whoever this was. At exactly 2:13 that night, the doorbell rang. Once. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I can see you." My stomach dropped. The curtains were shut tight. There was no line of sight into that room from anywhere outside. I reached for a screenshot. Before my thumb even landed on the screen, the message was gone. Not deleted. Gone. No notification left behind. No thread. Nothing in my messages app at all. As if it had never been sent. I called the police that night. They searched the house top to bottom and found nothing. One of them, not unkindly, suggested I might be overtired. Maybe letting my imagination run with me. Alone in a new house. They told me to stay somewhere else until my parents got back. I called my friend Jack. He insisted I crash at his place. Before we left, I powered my phone all the way off. Not silent. Not airplane mode. Off. At 2:13 that morning, Jack's apartment buzzer rang. Neither of us moved to answer it. Then my phone, off, in my pocket, lit up on its own. One notification. "You left your house." Jack read it over my shoulder. "Who is this?" "I don't know." Before either of us could touch it, the message disappeared again. The next day, we drove back to grab some of my things. The house looked untouched, until I reached the kitchen. An open can of tomato soup sat perfectly centered on the floor. Nothing stolen. Nothing broken. Just one object, moved. Placed with a kind of care that felt worse than if it had been thrown. It wasn't damage. It was a signature. That afternoon I bought 2 battery-powered trail cameras. No Wi-Fi, no internet connection, no remote access. Nothing to hack. I set them up facing the front hallway and went to bed. One camera recorded nothing at all. The second captured 27 seconds. The hallway sat empty and still. Then, on the video, the microwave clock across the room reset itself to 12, and the footage glitched for a frame. When the picture steadied, the front door was standing wide open. No one had walked in, no one walked out. It just stood open for several long seconds, then slowly swung shut on its own. I copied the footage and gave the memory card to the police. That night, I watched my copy again, and again. On what must have been my 7th replay, I finally saw it. Not the door, not the hallway. The mirror at the end of the hall, catching the top of the staircase in its reflection. For less than a second, someone was standing there, watching, wearing my favorite gray hoodie, the one I hadn't been able to find since we moved in. Same height as me. Same build, same haircut. If you blinked, you'd swear it was me, standing in my own house. I shut the laptop and didn't open it again that night. A week later, the police called. The file was corrupted, they said. Some kind of virus had eaten through it. My copy, the one I had also failed the same way. My parents sold the house 6 months later. Last year, the woman who bought it tracked down my parents' number. She only asked one question. "Did your front door ever unlock itself?" They didn't know how to answer her. There's one detail I never told anyone. Not my parents. Not the police. Not even Jack. In that half-second of mirror footage, the reflection wasn't looking at the open door. It was looking directly into the camera, like it knew that someday someone would be watching that footage, like it had been waiting for that exact moment. No one was ever identified. No one was ever arrested. Sometimes I wonder if someone had been living in that house before we ever moved in. Quietly, patiently, learning our routines, waiting for the one night I'd be alone. I still don't know. But some nights, even now, in a house miles away from that one, I get the feeling that something is looking at me, from just behind my own reflection, and I still pull the blanket up over my head. I was 23, finishing my last semester of college online, and working nights for an IT support company. I lived in an apartment a fair distance from my parents' place. Since I worked from home, I was the obvious choice when they flew to Seattle to visit old friends. 5 days, they said. Easy. My dad had always been paranoid about break-ins. Cameras covered every entrance. Glass break sensors protected every downstairs window. Smart locks. A fully monitored alarm system. If someone got into that house, I'd know. Or at least, that's what I believed. The first 2 days were completely normal. Work, dinner, Netflix, sleep. Nothing worth mentioning. Then Wednesday morning I walked into the kitchen and found a cabinet door open. Not wide, just enough to notice. I closed it without thinking much about it. An hour later I opened the same cabinet to grab a coffee mug and found every single mug turned upside down. My mother always stacked them right side up. I'd lived in that house for 18 years. I knew exactly where everything belonged, and exactly how. I stood there, trying to remember if I'd done it myself while half asleep. Maybe. Maybe not. I genuinely couldn't say. So I let it go. That was my first mistake. Not the cabinet itself, but deciding it wasn't worth taking seriously. That evening, while I was cooking, Alexa spoke on her own. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand that." I hadn't said a word. I checked the voice history in the app. There wasn't one. According to Alexa's own logs, she'd never activated it at all. I unplugged her anyway and told myself it was just a software glitch. Around midnight, I was watching a movie when I heard footsteps upstairs. 3 slow steps. A pause. 3 more. I muted the TV. Silence. I grabbed the baseball bat my dad kept by the laundry room, but instead of going upstairs alone, I called my neighbor, Carl, an off-duty police officer. He was at my door in under 2 minutes. We cleared the house together, room by room, closets, the attic. Every window was still locked from the inside. "No one's here," he said, "but I heard footsteps." He gave me a look that wasn't unkind. "Maybe you're just a little on edge, being here by yourself." That answer bothered me more than if he'd simply called me crazy. The next morning, I pulled up the security footage. At 11:58 the night before, every downstairs camera had briefly frozen. Not all at once. The kitchen, then the hallway, then the living room. Each one froze for about 2 seconds. The outdoor cameras never blinked. I called the security company. Their technician checked the server logs and told me there had been no outage of any kind. I sent him screenshots of the frozen frames. He called back 10 minutes later. He sounded genuinely confused. "I don't know what you're looking at," he said. "On our end, the cameras never froze." I stared at my laptop. The glitch was right there in front of me. But as far as their servers were concerned, it had never happened. That afternoon, I decided to rule out the obvious explanation. I took the night off work, determined to watch and wait. Fully rested, fully alert. At 1:47 in the morning, my bedroom door opened. Slowly, quiet enough that it barely made a sound. Just enough hallway light spilled across the floor to catch my eye. I looked at the door. It was open. Then I looked at my phone. The live feed from the hallway camera, pointed directly at that same door, showed it closed. I looked back up. Still open. Back down at the phone, still closed. I sat there for almost 30 seconds, trying to make the two pictures agree with each other. Then, on the screen, the door in the camera feed began to open. Slowly. Exactly the way I'd already watched it open in the room around me. Several minutes earlier. The feed wasn't live. It was behind, by a few minutes. Every camera in that house was running on a delay. A delay I hadn't noticed until that exact moment, which meant I had no idea what, if anything, had actually happened in real time while I was watching old footage and calling it live. I told myself it was air pressure moving an old door. I wanted very badly to believe that. The next day, I replaced every camera with battery-powered trail cameras. No Wi-Fi, no internet, no delay, nothing to hack. For the first time in days, I felt like I could trust what I was looking at. The next morning, every memory card had recorded perfectly, except one. The hallway that connected towards my bedroom, memory card was empty, not corrupted, not damaged, just empty. as if it had never been turned on. That evening, my younger sister video called from college dorm. She squinted at the screen. "Who's the guy behind you?" I spun around so fast I knocked my chair over. "Nothing," she laughed. "I'm kidding." After that, days went by smoothly. Absolutely nothing. Long enough that I started to relax. Long enough to think maybe I really had been overtired. Maybe I'd been imagining things. Saturday morning, I found an old disposable camera sitting on the dining room table. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't mine. It wasn't my parents'. My heart was already pounding by the time I reached the car. The photo lab technician looked through the roll before handing it back. 12 shots, he said. He loaded them onto a computer. Every photo had been taken inside my parents' house. The first several were old. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, family dinners. There were people in the photos I didn't recognize. Then the pictures became newer. My bedroom, the kitchen. One had been taken while I was sleeping in the sofa, completely unaware. The timestamp said it had been taken 3 nights earlier. The last photo made my stomach turn. It showed me standing at the kitchen sink, looking almost directly at the camera. "When was this taken?" the technician asked. "I don't know." I called Carl. Carl took it seriously after that. Detectives processed the disposable camera. The only fingerprints on it were mine, from handling it that morning. One detective asked me carefully if I'd ever sleepwalked. Never. At least, not as far as I knew. The locks showed no signs of tampering. The alarm logs showed the system had never been disarmed. There was no evidence on paper that anyone had ever entered that house. And yet, 12 photographs existed that said otherwise. I moved back to my apartment before my parents even got home, not long after they sold the house. The new owners tore out the floors, the walls, and installed an entirely new security system. As far as I know, they've never called asking questions about the house. I try to tell myself, that's a good sign. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. This is a brand new channel, and your support means everything. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and check out my previous videos.